Now, here talking about Criterion Collection, the Winchester 73 4K from the Criterion Collection. This is amazing. This, as you guys know, I can't assume that you know, this might be somebody's first episode. I love Westerns. I adore the Western genre. And I didn't always, this is something that, you know, Westerns were always there, but it was only as an adult that I really started to understand them and what they were saying. And, you know, once you start to see other genres and other films in those genres, you have a bigger vocabulary by which to understand the thing. And having seen as many of the Westerns as I've seen now, ranging from, you know, Silence, you know, to through the B Westerns that I love. I've really developed a love of the B Western, you know, Tex Ritter and Charles Starrett and Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, of course, but also, you know, Buck Jones and, you know, there's so many of these guys. There's dozens of these actors, Tim Holt, Tim McCoy. And then through the studio Westerns, the golden age, the 1950s are the golden age of the Western, because you have this post-war maturing, really. It's almost like a sadness, because after World War II, these people have really lived through something. Here, case in point, this movie's 1950, right? This is kind of ground zero for the 1950s Western. 1950 alone. There's a special feature on here, Ballyhoo Motion Pictures, Daniel Griffith's Ballyhoo Motion Pictures. Daniel Griffith's been here multiple times. He was just here about a month or two ago talking about the importance of bonus features. He's done this documentary. What is it actually called? I want to shout it out by name. Forces of Nature, Anthony Mann at Universal. That's a Ballyhoo documentary with Alan K. Rhodey, with C. Courtney Joyner, with Mr. Word from Word on Westerns, if you know that YouTube channel. And I think Alan K. Rhodey says, you know, 1950 alone, they made 100 Westerns. So the 50s are the golden age for the Western. But before Anthony Mann arrives at Universal, and before James Stewart starts making these darker films, James Stewart was a comedic actor. He was sort of the Tom Hanks of the 80s and the 90s, right? The Tom Hanks before Philadelphia, right? The Tom Hanks that's like, you know, the everyman kind of guy. And after World War II, James Stewart wanted to make darker pictures. He wanted to show that side of him. That's actually my favorite Jimmy Stewart, is the darker Jimmy Stewart who's wrestling with his inner demons, because he's so good at it. You can tell it was always there, but he just didn't show it often in film. So 1950, we are launching this collaboration with Anthony Mann, who had come out of film noir, B-movies. He'd come out of B-movies. And, you know, I love B-movies. Eagle Lion, you know. Jimmy Stewart is entering this new phase of his career, so they collaborate together. They ended up, I think they make 8 films together over the course of the 1950s. Then after that 8th film, they have a falling out, and they never do anything with each other again. Don't even seem to like each other anymore. They have a real parting of the ways. But all through the 50s, they're making these touchstone films. And Winchester 73 is a very special film that's, I mean, I don't know if it's the best of them. Who am I to say? And it's probably going to come down to whichever one I'm watching at that time. But, you know, Anthony Mann has 3 periods of his career. He's got like the B-movie sort of Poverty Row era. Then he moves into studio pictures in the 1950s. And then by the 1960s, as his career sort of ending, swelling to a crescendo and then ending, he's doing these massive spectacle movies. Huge studio pictures. This is the middle period. That's my actually, I might actually prefer the B films to his theatrical work, but this is the most approachable, competently made era for Anthony Mann. And it's a Western with, I think the gun starts with a shooting competition, and whoever wins the Winchester 73. The 50s had I'm thinking of the show that Warner Archive just put out on Blu-ray a while back, a year or two ago, Colt 45. And it's like, it's the gun that tamed the West. You know, the whole idea is like they put the emphasis on the gun itself. And then the Winchester 73, as the prologue to this tells us, the Winchester, that was the gun, it was the rifle, you know, that tamed the West. This is like this fetishization of the firearm itself. But I think that really there's an argument to be made that the gun is the main character of the story, because over the course of the film, it changes hands from person to person. You want James Stewart to have it, but he's the one that's supposed to have it. But other people have it. And then the movie, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil the film for you, because even though it is a 1950 film, I know a lot of you guys haven't seen it, and I want you to see it. And I want you to go in without preconceived notions about what to expect from it. So it has secrets that it reveals over the course of the movie. It has a place, it has a time, it has a context. As we're talking, because it's, you know, the 1870s, we're talking about after Custer's last stand, the Battle of Little Bighorn. We're talking, characters are referencing this. They reference the Civil War. And I think Jimmy Stewart says something like, you know, I fought, but I wasn't on your side, or something like that. It is rooted in some real history, and it's got the Universal players of 1950 in it. We've got Rock Hudson as a Native American, which you wouldn't do now, but as a rock historian, as a Rock Hudson fan and historian of these movies, it's great to see him before he became Rock Hudson, right? You know, he's still kind of a not a background player, but he's still a contract player, right? Anthony Curtis, before he's Tony Curtis, you know, Tony Curtis, before he's that guy, way before his biggest hits, he's got a few lines in the movie, but he's there. James Best, the incredible James Best, who would go on to I'm trying to avoid the Dukes of Hazzard is the most obvious thing. I was trying to go for something that's less obvious. How about that episode of Andy Griffith, where the Andy Griffith Show, where he's the guitar player who comes into town and it's like he's so good at the guitar. Love James Best. He's in it. Shelley Winters is I guess she's the female lead. It's not really a romance. There's not a lot of romance in the movie, which I'm actually grateful for because that would feel forced. But Shelley Winters was heartbreaking when she wanted to be, and she doesn't really have to do that in this movie. She doesn't have to twist your guts out with making you feel that anguish for a mistreated. You know, she plays wounded really well, is I think what I'm trying to say. She doesn't necessarily have to do that, but she's great in the movie. Dan Duryea pops up in the last third of the film, feeling like he's out of a noir. You know, he's sort of a tough guy. Hey, he talks like this, right? Hey, I want that gun. Where'd you get that gun? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that gun and I'm going to use it on you. That kind of guy. He's a real slimy noir kind of a character. And you know, it doesn't necessarily feel like he's in a Western, but he's Dan Duryea, right? He can do whatever he wants to do, and he was the best at that. It's got incredible cinematography. I'm looking at my notes because I want to make sure I cover all the things I wanted to say. It's got incredible cinematography. There's a shot where there's this carriage, this cart is being chased by by Native Americans, by an attack party, right? And the camera is in front of the carriage as it's coming into camera. So you have the perspective of being in front of the carriage as it's coming towards you, and then the added perspective of the pursuing party, the attackers behind the carriage bearing down on you. It is incredible and very ambitious. I mean, this is for Anthony Mann. He always had great camera operators, or he often did have great cinematographers who brought, you know, John Alton. He worked with John Alton. These guys that would create some of the striking visuals. And again, movies, man. There's nothing else like them. How do you not love movies? How do you watch something like this and go, it's all right? You know, I don't understand that. I really don't understand that. So I don't know. I just think it's a wonderful movie. It has a high level of realism. There's a climactic battle at the end of the movie where these characters are taking shots at each other, basically on the side of a mountain face. They're hiding among the rocks, shooting at each other. And with every shot, it ricochets around them. You see the bullets ricocheting. Incredible technical effects, incredible visuals for this. Fantastic film, and this Criterion edition is wonderful. It's got the Ballyhoo documentary, which runs like 47 minutes. Sort of a companion piece to one that Daniel did for, what was it? It was a couple of years ago for a different Anthony Mann Universal film. I don't remember which one it was, but they work as sort of, I wouldn't say bookends, but they're companion pieces. It's got an audio commentary by James Stewart and film historian Paul Lindenschmidt. Adam Pyron on the portrayal of the Native American in the Western genre. It's got the Lux Theater radio adaptation of the film from 1951. And it's got this essay. These fold-out pamphlets inside. This essay by film critic Imogen Sarah Smith, who's, I associate her with noir, but there is a lot of the noir. The line between noir and Western in the 1950s is pretty thin. It's a pretty thin line. They influence each other. There's a lot of noir elements in the 1950s Western. It's a lot of man wrestling with self. Fatalism. And there's a lot of fatalism in Winchester 73. There's this part in the movie where they get cornered into a they're surrounded, basically. Our heroes, if they are heroes, our anti-heroes, our protagonists, are surrounded. There's the cavalry is there, and they're surrounded, and they go to bed that night pretty much feeling like with the dawn of the next morning, they're all going to die. And that's not the end of the movie either. That's like halfway into the movie. So there's this fatalism that directly came out of World War II, because so many of these guys fought, served, and saw things. I mean, they saw combat, right? So many of these people saw combat. That's what makes the 1950s Westerns so special. With the 60s comes revisionism, which has its place. But for me, the 50s is the pinnacle of the myth of the American West, with so much of the maturity that came with the 1950s. And so that's why I love it so much.